Sarah Johnson stepped off the Greyhound bus at the gleaming downtown terminal, clutching her worn duffel bag and a crumpled piece of paper with an address. The city towered around her like a concrete jungle, nothing like the rolling hills and cornfields of her in rural Kentucky. At 23, she had never seen buildings this tall or streets this busy. Cars honked constantly, people rushed past without making eye contact, and the air tasted different, thick with exhaust and ambition. She had come here for one reason: money. Her daddy's medical bills were piling up after his stroke, and the family farm was 3 months behind on mortgage payments. The nursing agency back home had told her about this job, caring for a wealthy man who had been paralyzed in a car accident. The pay was more than she could make in 2 years back home, but it meant leaving everything she knew. Sarah had grown up taking care of people. When her mama died giving birth to her youngest brother, she became the woman of the house at age 12. She cooked, cleaned, tended to her 3 younger brothers, and helped her daddy with the farm. By 18, she was working as a certified nursing assistant at the county hospital, earning just enough to help keep the family afloat. The address led her to a glass tower that seemed to scrape the clouds. The doorman, dressed in a uniform fancier than any suit she had ever seen, looked her up and down with obvious doubt. Her second-hand dress and scuffed shoes marked her as different in this world of marble and gold. "I'm here to see," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm the new caregiver." The doorman made a phone call, speaking in hushed tones. After what felt like an hour, he handed her a badge and pointed toward the elevators. "Penthouse, top floor." The elevator ride took forever, her ears popping as they climbed higher than she had ever been. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world that belonged in magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city spread out below. The furniture looked like art, and everything was white and chrome and perfect. "You must be Sarah." The voice came from a woman in an expensive suit, her hair pulled back in a perfect bun. "I'm Mr.'s personal assistant. We need to discuss some ground rules before you meet him." Led her through the apartment, explaining schedules and procedures. The master bedroom had been converted into a medical suite, complete with a hospital bed, monitors, and equipment Sarah recognized from her work at the county hospital. But even the medical equipment here looked newer and more advanced than anything she had used before. "Mr. was injured 6 months ago," explained, her voice clinical and cold. "He has no feeling or movement below his chest. He requires assistance with all daily activities: bathing, eating, medication, physical therapy. He has been difficult with previous caregivers. You are the 7th person we have hired." Sarah nodded, understanding more than realized. She had dealt with difficult patients before, men who were angry at their circumstances, frightened by their loss of independence, frustrated by their limitations. Hurt people often lashed out at those trying to help them. "What happened to the other caregivers?" Sarah asked. His expression tightened. "Mr. can be demanding. He has high standards and little patience for incompetence. He's a brilliant businessman who built a tech empire from nothing. This situation has been very challenging for him to accept." They heard voices from the bedroom, a man's voice sharp with anger and another voice trying to calm him down. Sighed deeply. "That would be the physical therapist. Mr. refuses to cooperate with his rehabilitation. He seems to believe that if he ignores his condition, it will somehow reverse itself." Sarah had seen this before too. Denial was often the first response to life-changing injuries, especially for people who had been strong and independent their whole lives. "Maybe I should meet him," she said quietly. Led her to the bedroom door and knocked gently. "Mister, your new caregiver is here." The voices inside stopped abruptly. After a moment, opened the door and they entered the room. It was nothing like Sarah had expected. The photos in business magazines showed a confident man in expensive suits, commanding boardrooms and closing billion-dollar deals. The man in the hospital bed looked broken. His dark hair was uncombed, his face was pale and drawn, and his eyes held a mixture of rage and despair that she recognized all too well. The physical therapist, a cheerful woman named Lisa, was packing up her equipment with obvious frustration. "He won't even try the exercises," she said to. "I can't help someone who refuses to help himself." Turned his head toward Sarah, and she saw him take in her appearance with the same dismissive look as the doorman. His eyes lingered on her simple dress and nervous expression. "Another small-town nurse here to save the poor crippled billionaire," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let me save you some time. I don't need your pity, your cheerful small talk, or your homespun wisdom. I need to be left alone." The words were meant to hurt, and they did. But Sarah had heard worse from scared patients back home. She looked at him steadily, seeing past the anger to the fear underneath. "I'm not here to save anybody," she said simply. "I'm here to do a job. You need help, and I know how to help people. That's all there is to it." Seemed surprised by her calm response. Most people either fought back when he was cruel or retreated in tears. This young woman just stood there, looking at him with something that wasn't pity or fear, but understanding. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone slightly less hostile. "Sarah Johnson. I'm from Kentucky." "Of course you are. Let me guess. You grew up on a farm, you believe hard work solves everything, and you think all I need is some country common sense to get better." Sarah considered this for a moment. "I did grow up on a farm, and I do believe in hard work, but I also know that sometimes life knocks you down so hard that getting back up seems impossible. I'm not here to tell you what you should feel or how you should heal. I'm just here to help you get through each day." Something in her tone seemed to reach him. The anger in his eyes flickered, replaced briefly by something that looked like curiosity. "How old are you?" he asked. 23. He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. 23. I have suits older than you. What could you possibly know about my situation? I know what it's like to feel responsible for people and then lose the ability to take care of them," she said quietly. "I know what it's like to watch everything you worked for slip away while you can't do anything to stop it. And I know what it's like to have people look at you like you're broken." The room fell silent, and the physical therapist exchanged glances, surprised by the young woman's directness. Studied Sarah's face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. He had become expert at reading people during his years in business, and he could usually spot fake sincerity immediately. But this young woman's eyes held genuine understanding, not pity. "The other caregivers lasted an average of 12 days, he said finally. "What makes you think you'll be any different?" "I don't know if I will be," Sarah admitted. "But I need this job and you need help. Maybe we can figure out a way to make it work." Her honesty was refreshing after months of people telling him what they thought he wanted to hear. Had coached the previous caregivers to be positive and encouraging, to focus on his progress and potential for improvement. This young woman wasn't making any promises or offering false hope. She was just being real. "Fine," he said after a long pause. "We'll show you to your room and explain your duties. But understand this. I don't want conversation, I don't want friendship, and I definitely don't want your life story. Do your job, collect your paycheck, and stay out of my way." Sarah nodded. "That sounds fair." As led her out of the room, found himself watching the young woman's retreating figure. There was something about her quiet confidence that intrigued him, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. Showed Sarah to a guest bedroom that was larger than her entire childhood home. The bed was covered in white linens that probably cost more than her monthly salary back in Kentucky. The attached bathroom had a shower with multiple heads and towels so thick she could get lost in them. "Your duties begin at 6 in the morning," explained, handing her a detailed schedule. "Breakfast, medications, physical therapy assistance, lunch, afternoon care, dinner, evening medications, and help preparing for bed. You have Sundays off, though you're expected to remain available for emergencies." Sarah studied the schedule, noting that it covered nearly every waking hour. "When does he sleep?" "That's been an issue. He has trouble sleeping since the accident. Sometimes he's awake most of the night, which makes the days difficult." That evening, Sarah unpacked her few belongings and called home from the phone in her room. Her daddy's voice sounded weak and tired, but he perked up when she described the apartment. "Sounds like you landed in some kind of fairy tale, baby girl," he said with a weak chuckle. "Just remember who you are and where you come from." "I will, Daddy. How are the boys?" "Getting by. Tommy's keeping up with the farm work and the twins are doing good in school. Don't you worry about us. You just focus on doing your job." After she hung up, Sarah sat by the huge window looking out at the city lights. She felt like an alien in this world of wealth and privilege, but she was here for a reason. Every day she stayed meant money for her father's medical care and a chance to save the family farm. Her first real test came the next morning. She knocked gently on his door at 6 o'clock sharp and entered when he didn't respond. He was awake, staring at the ceiling with the same expression of resigned despair she had seen the day before. Good morning, she said softly. Time for breakfast and medications. I'm not hungry. That's fine, but you still need to eat something with your medications or they'll make you sick. She had brought a tray with simple foods, toast, scrambled eggs, orange juice. Nothing fancy, but nutritious and easy to digest. She set up the rolling table beside his bed and began checking his medications. The previous caregivers always brought me elaborate breakfasts, said, watching her work. Gourmet omelets, imported coffee, fresh fruit arranged like art, trying to impress me, I suppose. I don't know how to make gourmet anything, Sarah said honestly, but I know how to make food that's good for you. She helped him sit up in bed, adjusting his pillows with practiced efficiency. Her movements were gentle but confident, and she didn't flinch when he needed assistance with tasks that embarrassed him. You've done this before, he observed. Yes, sir. Back home, I worked at the hospital and took care of folks who needed help. As she helped him with breakfast, found himself studying her face. She was pretty in a natural, unpolished way, clear skin with a light dusting of freckles, brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and green eyes that seemed to see more than she let on. She wore no makeup and her clothes were simple, but there was something appealing about her authenticity in a world where everything else felt artificial. The physical therapist arrived at 9 o'clock, and Sarah stayed to observe the session. Lisa explained the exercises designed to maintain muscle tone and prevent complications, but remained uncooperative. I don't see the point, he said flatly. My legs are never going to work again. Why torture myself pretending otherwise? The exercises aren't about walking again, Lisa explained patiently. They're about preventing blood clots, maintaining circulation, and keeping your muscles from atrophying completely. So I can be a healthier cripple. How wonderful. Sarah watched the interaction quietly, nodding how used cruelty as a shield to keep people at a distance. When Lisa finally gave up and left, Sarah remained in the room. She's trying to help you, Sarah said simply. She's trying to justify her paycheck, replied bitterly. Maybe, but those exercises she talked about, they really are important. I've seen what happens when people don't do them. And what happens? Sarah considered her words carefully. Bad things, painful things that make everything harder than it needs to be. Looked at her suspiciously. Are you going to lecture me about having a positive attitude and fighting the good fight? No, sir, you'll have whatever attitude you want to have. But your body doesn't care about your attitude. It just knows what it needs to stay healthy. Her matter-of-fact approach surprised him. She wasn't trying to motivate him or inspire him. She was just stating facts. Show me, he said suddenly. Sir, show me the exercises. If you really know what you're talking about, show me. Sarah moved to the foot of his bed and began demonstrating the range of motion exercises she had learned during her nursing training. She explained how each movement helped maintain flexibility and circulation, speaking in simple terms without medical jargon. It's not about getting better, she said as she gently moved his legs through the prescribed motions. It's about not getting worse. Found himself participating despite his reservations. Her touch was professional but gentle, and she explained everything she was doing without making him feel helpless or... Where did you learn this? He asked. County hospital back home. We had lots of patients with spinal injuries, farm accidents mostly, car wrecks, folks who went from being strong and independent to needing help with everything. And they all did these exercises willingly. Sarah paused in her work. Most of them fought it at first. Being dependent on others is hard for people who are used to taking care of themselves. But the ones who did the work, they had fewer complications, less pain, and more good days. Good days. Days when they felt more like themselves. Days when their bodies weren't fighting them quite so much. Considered this as she continued the exercises. The previous caregivers had focused on motivation and encouragement, trying to convince him that he could overcome his limitations through willpower. This young woman was offering something different, the possibility of making his situation more bearable, not through denial or false hope, but through practical care. When she finished the exercises, felt oddly relaxed. The gentle movement had eased some of the constant tension in his muscles. Thank you, he said quietly, and was surprised by his own words. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. You're welcome. The rest of the day passed more smoothly than any since his accident. Sarah went about her duties with quiet efficiency, anticipating his needs without being intrusive. She helped him with lunch, assisted with phone calls and business matters, and managed his afternoon medications without fuss or commentary. In the evening, as she helped him prepare for bed, found himself curious about her background. "Tell me about your family," he said. "You said you didn't want conversation," she reminded him gently. "I changed my mind. Tell me about them." Sarah adjusted his pillows and checked his water glass before answering. "My daddy raises cattle and tobacco on our farm. He had a stroke 6 months ago and he's having trouble getting around now. I have 3 younger brothers. Tommy's 19 and helps run the farm, and the twins are 15 and still in school." "What about your mother?" "She died when I was 12, cancer." Heard the pain in her voice, quickly hidden but unmistakable. "That must have been hard." "It was, but we managed. Daddy did his best and I helped with the boys. We're a close family." "Is that why you took this job? To help with your father's medical expenses?" Sarah met his eyes directly. "Yes, sir. The pay here is more than I could make in 2 years back home. It means Daddy can get the care he needs and maybe we can keep the farm." Her honesty touched something in that he had thought was dead. Here was someone who understood sacrifice and responsibility, someone who had made hard choices to take care of the people she loved. "How long do you plan to stay?" he asked. "As long as you need me and I'm doing a good job. This position could save my family, mister. I don't take that lightly." That night lay awake thinking about the young woman sleeping down the hall. For the first time since his accident, he had made it through an entire day without feeling completely hopeless. Sarah Johnson was different from anyone he had ever met, authentic in a world of artifice, practical in the face of impossible circumstances, and strong in ways that had nothing to do with money or power. He didn't know yet that this quiet country girl was about to change his life in ways he never could have 3 weeks into her employment. Sarah had settled into a routine with that surprised everyone, including herself. The man who had driven away 6 caregivers was now participating in his physical therapy, eating regular meals, and even occasionally laughing at something she said. Noticed the change immediately and began to relax for the first time since accident. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday morning when Sarah arrived to find sitting up in bed, fully awake and alert instead of staring blankly at the ceiling. "Good morning," he said before she could speak. "I've been thinking about something you said yesterday." Sarah set down the breakfast tray and began organizing his medications. "What's that?" "You mentioned that your brother Tommy is running the farm now. How does a 19-year-old manage something like that?" "Same way anybody manages anything difficult," she replied, preparing his morning pills. "One day at a time, asking for help when he needs it and refusing to give up." Watched her efficient movements as she spoke. Over the past 3 weeks, he had learned to read her moods through small details. The way she arranged items on the tray when she was worried about something, how she hummed softly when she was content, the slight tightening around her eyes when she was tired. "You worry about him?" observed. Sarah paused in her work. "Every day. Tommy's smart and strong, but he's still just a boy trying to do a man's job. The neighbors help when they can, but everybody's struggling right now." "What kind of help does he need?" "Equipment mostly. Our tractor's 15 years old and breaks down constantly. The irrigation system needs updating. And there's always something. A sick cow, a fence that needs mending, crops that need attention at exactly the right time." Found himself genuinely interested in the details of farm life. His own childhood had been spent in urban poverty, and he had built his fortune in the digital world. The idea of working with your hands, depending on weather and soil and the health of animals, seemed both foreign and somehow appealing. "How much land does your family farm?" 200 acres. It's not huge, but it's been in our family for 3 generations. Daddy inherited it from his father and his father before that. The pride in her voice was unmistakable, and understood something about Sarah that he hadn't before. She wasn't just working to pay medical bills. She was working to preserve a legacy, to keep alive something that connected her family to their history and their identity. As she helped him with breakfast, made a decision that surprised him. "I want you to call your brother today. I'd like to speak with him." Sarah looked up sharply. "Sir?" "I'm curious about his operation. I might be able to offer some advice." "Mister, that's very kind, but Tommy wouldn't know how to talk to someone like you. He's never been anywhere but the county seat, and he's never met anybody with money. Then it's time he did. Business is business, whether you're dealing with cattle or computer code. The principles are the same. That afternoon, Sarah reluctantly placed the call home. Tommy was in from the fields, and she could hear the exhaustion in his voice even across the distance. "Sarah, how you doing, sis? We miss you something fierce." "I miss y'all too. Tommy, I have someone here who wants to talk to you about the farm. His name is, and he's very successful in business. He thinks he might be able to help somehow." "I don't need charity, Sarah," Tommy said quickly, his pride evident even through the phone. "It's not charity, he just wants to talk." Took the phone from her, and Sarah watched nervously as he began speaking with her brother. She had seen in business mode during phone calls with his own company, sharp, demanding, sometimes ruthless. But the voice he used with Tommy was different, respectful, interested, genuinely curious about the challenges of farming. "Tell me about your biggest problems," said after introducing himself. "What's keeping you awake at night?" For the next hour, listened as Tommy described the daily struggles of running a farm with inadequate equipment and limited capital. He asked detailed questions about costs, yields, profit margins, and market prices. Sarah was amazed to see how quickly grasped the economics of agriculture, translating Tommy's practical problems into business terms he understood. "You're carrying too much debt on equipment that's costing you money every day it breaks down," finally said. "You need to think about upgrading, but you need capital to do it." "Can't get a loan," Tommy replied matter-of-factly. "Banks don't want to lend to small farms right now, too risky, they say." Was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah could see his mind working. When he spoke again, his voice was businesslike but kind. "Tommy, I'm going to send someone to look at your operation, a consultant who specializes in agricultural efficiency. I want to understand exactly what you need and what it would cost to modernize your equipment." "Mister, we can't afford consultants." "You're not paying for it. Consider it research for a potential investment opportunity." Sarah's eyes widened. "Mister." He held up a hand to silence her. "Tommy, your sister has been taking excellent care of me. I'm simply exploring whether there might be a way for me to return the favor while making a sound business decision." After the call ended, Sarah stared at in amazement. "Why would you do that?" "Because I can, and because good people shouldn't lose everything they've worked for just because life knocked them down." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that went far beyond farming and business. Sarah realized that was talking about more than her family's situation. He was talking about his own. Over the following days, their relationship began to shift in subtle but significant ways. Started asking Sarah about her life, her dreams, her thoughts about things that had nothing to do with his care. She told him about growing up on the farm, about learning to can vegetables from her grandmother, about staying up all night with sick animals, about the satisfaction of seeing crops grow from seed to harvest. In return, began to share stories from his own life. He talked about building his technology company from nothing, about the risks and failures that had taught him resilience, about the loneliness that had come with success. He was surprised by how easy it was to talk to this young woman who listened without judgment and responded with genuine interest rather than the calculating attention he was used to receiving. The consultant arrived at the Johnson farm the following week, an agricultural specialist from the state university who spent 3 days evaluating every aspect of the operation. His report, delivered to by overnight courier, painted a picture of a small farm with excellent potential that was being held back by outdated equipment and insufficient capital investment. "The fundamentals are sound," explained to Sarah as he reviewed the report. "Your brother knows what he's doing and your land is productive, but he's losing money every day because he can't afford the tools he needs to be efficient." "So what are you suggesting?" Was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah could see him weighing his words carefully. "I'm thinking about making an investment in Johnson Family Farms, providing capital for equipment upgrades and improvements in exchange for a percentage of future profits." Sarah felt her heart speed up. "That sounds too good to be true." "It's not charity, Sarah, it's business. Your family has something valuable, productive land, agricultural knowledge, and a strong work ethic. Those are assets worth investing in." "But what if something goes wrong? What if the crops fail or prices drop? We could lose everything." Met her eyes directly. That's always the risk in business, but sometimes you have to take calculated risks to build something better. Your brother understands that. He's been taking risks every day just to keep the farm running. That evening called a conference call with Tommy, their father, and several agricultural experts. For 2 hours, they discussed the details of a potential partnership, what equipment was needed, how much it would cost, what kind of returns were realistic, and how to structure an agreement that would benefit everyone involved. Sarah listened to the conversation with growing amazement, was treating her family's small farm with the same serious attention he would give a major business deal. He asked tough questions, demanded realistic projections, and insisted on proper legal documentation. But underlying all the business talk was genuine respect for her family and what they were trying to accomplish. "This could really work," Tommy said at the end of the call, excitement evident in his voice. "With new equipment and better irrigation, we could probably increase yields by 30% within 2 years. And with proper business planning and marketing, you could improve your profit margins even more," added. "This isn't just about buying new tractors. It's about turning your farm into a sustainable, profitable operation that can support your family for generations." After the call ended, Sarah sat quietly for a long time trying to process what had just happened. The solution to her family's financial problems, the reason she had taken this job in the first place, was suddenly within reach. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why are you doing this for us?" Considered his answer carefully. The truth was complicated, involving gratitude for her care, respect for her character, and something deeper that he wasn't ready to name. "Because it's a good investment," he said finally, "and because your family reminds me of something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" "That there are still people in the world who believe in taking care of each other, who work hard not just for themselves, but for the people they love. That's rare, Sarah. That's worth protecting." The partnership agreement was finalized within 2 weeks. Lawyers structured it as a joint venture that gave the Johnson family control of their operation while providing with a fair return on his investment. New equipment was ordered, irrigation systems were upgraded, and plans were made for expanded planting in the spring. But the business arrangement was only part of what was happening between and Sarah. As the weeks passed, their daily interactions became less about patient and caregiver and more about two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Found himself looking forward to their conversations about everything from politics to poetry. Sarah had received only a high school education, but she was naturally intelligent and curious about the world beyond her small town. Enjoyed introducing her to ideas and experiences she had never encountered, while learning from her practical wisdom and grounded perspective on life. "You know," said one evening as Sarah helped him prepare for bed, "I haven't thought about work all day. Is that good or bad? 6 months ago, I would have said it was terrible. Work was everything to me. But now, I'm starting to think there might be more important things." Sarah checked his medications and adjusted his pillows. "Like what?" "Like this. Like having someone to talk to who sees me as more than a balance sheet or a business opportunity. Like knowing that there are people in the world who care about each other enough to sacrifice their own comfort for someone else's well-being." The words created an intimacy between them that neither had expected. Sarah felt her cheeks warm as she realized that was talking about her, about what she meant to him. "Mr. he said softly, "My name is." She repeated, testing the sound of his name without the formal title. "I think you're a better man than you give yourself credit for." "What makes you say that?" "A selfish man wouldn't invest in a small farm in Kentucky just to help a family he's never met. A cold man wouldn't listen for hours to a teenager talk about cattle and corn prices. A heartless man wouldn't." She trailed off, suddenly aware that she was about to say something that would change everything between them. "Wouldn't what?" asked gently. Sarah met his eyes and saw something there that made her heart race. Warmth, affection, and something deeper that she was afraid to name. "Wouldn't make someone like me feel like she matters," she finished quietly. Reached out slowly and took her hand in his. "You do matter, Sarah, more than you know." They sat in silence for a moment, both aware that they had crossed a line from professional relationship to something personal and profound. Sarah knew she should pull her hand away, should maintain the boundaries that her job required. But touch was gentle and warm, and for the first time since she had arrived in the city, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. "This is complicated," she said finally. "Yes, agreed, it is. You're my employer. I'm just a country girl who doesn't know anything about your world." "You know the most important things," said. "You know how to care for people. You know what loyalty means. You know that there's more to life than money and success. But what happens when you don't need a caregiver anymore? When you're better and you go back to your old life?" Was quiet for a long moment. The truth was that he had been thinking about this question every day for weeks. His physical condition was stable, and he was participating in therapy now. Eventually, he would need less assistance with daily activities. What would happen to Sarah then? "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I don't want you to leave." Sarah felt tears threaten at the honesty in his voice. She had come to care for this man more than she had ever expected, but she also knew that their situations were vastly different. He lived in a world of private jets and board meetings, while she came from a world of early morning chores and county fairs. "We'll figure it out," said, squeezing her hand gently. "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." As Sarah turned off the lights and quietly left his room, both of them knew that their relationship had fundamentally changed. What had started as a professional arrangement had become something neither had planned for, a connection that transcended their different backgrounds and circumstances. But they also both knew that the biggest challenges still lay ahead. Again, the first real test of their relationship came 2 months later when Sister Victoria arrived for an unexpected visit. Sarah was helping with his morning exercises when they heard the elevator doors open and startled voice echoing through the apartment. "Victoria, I wasn't expecting you until next week." "I finished my business in Paris early," came a crisp, aristocratic voice. "Where is my brother?" Sarah felt tense beside her. He had mentioned his sister only briefly, a successful art dealer who lived in Europe and managed the family's charitable foundation. From his tone when he spoke of her, Sarah gathered that their relationship was complicated. Victoria swept into the bedroom like a force of nature. She was tall and elegant, with perfectly styled silver hair and clothes that probably cost more than Sarah's yearly salary back home. Her eyes took in the scene with obvious disapproval, her powerful brother being helped with exercises by a young woman in simple clothes. "Darling," Victoria said, kissing the air near his cheek, "you look better than I expected." "Hello, Victoria. This is Sarah Johnson, my caregiver." Victoria's cool gaze assessed Sarah from head to toe, clearly finding her lacking. "How charming. Another nurse. What happened to the one from the agency?" "Sarah is from a private service," said carefully. He had never told Victoria about the string of failed caregivers, preferring to maintain his privacy about just how difficult his adjustment had been. "I see. Well, Miss Johnson, I'm sure my brother appreciates your services, but I'd like to speak with him privately now." Sarah recognized a dismissal when she heard one. She began gathering the exercise equipment, but caught her hand. "Sarah doesn't need to leave. We have no secrets." Victoria's eyebrows rose at this display of familiarity. "Really? How interesting." For the next hour, Victoria dominated the conversation, filling in on family business, social obligations, and charitable foundation matters. She spoke about people and places that were completely foreign to Sarah: art galleries in Milan, society parties in New York, investment opportunities in emerging markets. Sarah tried to make herself invisible, but she could feel Victoria's calculating gaze on her throughout the conversation. When Victoria finally left to freshen up before lunch, the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "She doesn't like me," Sarah said quietly. "Victoria doesn't like anyone who might threaten her vision of how things should be," replied. "Don't take it personally." But Sarah did take it personally, because Victoria's obvious disapproval forced her to confront questions she had been avoiding. What was she doing here, really? Was she fooling herself about her relationship with? Did she belong in this world of wealth and sophistication? These doubts only grew stronger over the next 3 days as Victoria remained in the apartment. Sister was charming and cultured, speaking multiple languages, and discussing art, literature, and world events with casual expertise. She brought news of their mutual friends, other wealthy, successful people who lived fascinating lives in major cities around the world. Listening to their conversations, Sarah felt increasingly like an outsider. When Victoria mentioned a mutual friend's recent gallery opening in London, responded with detailed knowledge of contemporary art. When she discussed a charity auction in the Hamptons, knew all the major players and their histories. This was real world, Sarah realized. Not the quiet, intimate space they had created together in his recovery, but a glittering realm of culture and influence that she could never truly understand or navigate. "You've been very quiet today," observed that evening after Victoria had retired to her room. Sarah was helping him with his bedtime routine, a process that had become as natural as breathing over the past months. But tonight, her usual easy conversation was replaced by thoughtful silence. "Just listening," she said, "learning about your world." "What do you think of it?" Sarah considered her words carefully. "It's very impressive. Your sister knows so much about everything, art, politics, business. She's traveled everywhere and met everyone important. It's a life I can't even imagine." Heard something in her tone that alarmed him. "Sarah, what are you really saying?" She finished adjusting his pillows and checked his water glass before answering. "I'm saying that maybe I've been fooling myself. Maybe I've been thinking this thing between us could work when really we live in completely different worlds." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Sarah turned to face him, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. "You've built an empire. You know presidents and princes. You own art that costs more than most people make in a lifetime. I'm a farm girl from Kentucky who's never been out of the country, never been to a fancy restaurant, never read the books you and Victoria discuss so casually." Felt panic rise in his chest. "None of that matters." "Doesn't it? When you get better, really better, you're going to want your old life back. You'll want to travel and attend gallery openings and make deals with important people. What place would someone like me have in that life?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications that neither wanted to face. "I don't want my old life back," said quietly. "I want a new life, a better life, one that includes you." "But for how long? Until you get bored with playing house with the country girl? Until your friends and family make it clear that I don't belong?" Tried to reach for her hand, but Sarah stepped back, maintaining distance between them for the first time in weeks. "Your sister hasn't said anything directly," Sarah continued, "but I can see what she's thinking. She's wondering what game I'm playing, what I'm after. She thinks I'm some kind of gold digger who's taking advantage of you while you're vulnerable." "Victoria's opinion doesn't matter." "But it does matter. She's your family, and she's not wrong to be suspicious. Look at this situation honestly. A poor girl from nowhere suddenly shows up to take care of a billionaire, and now they're having romantic feelings for each other. It looks exactly like what she thinks it is." Felt his world tilting off its axis. For months, Sarah had been his anchor, the one person who made his changed life bearable and meaningful. The idea of losing her was unthinkable. "So what are you saying? That you're leaving?" Sarah's voice broke slightly as she answered. "I'm saying maybe I should. Maybe it would be better for both of us if I went back home now that you're doing better. You could find a professional caregiver for the remaining care you need, and I could." "Could what? Pretend this never happened? Pretend we don't care about each other?" The tears Sarah had been holding back finally spilled over. "I don't know. I just know that staying here and pretending we have a future together is only going to make it hurt worse when reality finally sets in." Watched the woman he had come to love prepare to walk away from him, and he felt more helpless than he had since the day of his accident. But this time, his paralysis wasn't physical. It was emotional. How could he convince her that their feelings were real and worth fighting for when he wasn't even sure himself how to bridge the gap between their different worlds? "Don't make any decisions tonight," he said finally. "Please just think about it, think about us." Sarah nodded and quietly left the room, leaving alone with fears he had never experienced before. Not the fear of losing the use of his legs, but the fear of losing the woman who had taught him what love really meant. The next morning, Victoria cornered Sarah in the kitchen while was on a business call. "I think we should talk," Victoria said, her tone pleasant but her eyes cold. Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee, needing something to do with her hands. "About what, Mrs.?" "Please call me Victoria, and I think you know exactly what we need to discuss." For a long moment, the two women studied each other. Victoria saw a young woman who was prettier than she had initially realized, with an air of quiet dignity that was harder to dismiss than she had expected. Sarah saw a sophisticated woman who was clearly prepared to protect her brother from what she perceived as a threat. "You care about him," Victoria said finally. "That much is obvious." "Yes, ma'am, I do." And he cares about you, more than is wise, I think. Sarah set down her coffee cup carefully. What is it you want me to do? I want you to be realistic. Is vulnerable right now. This accident has changed him, made him dependent and grateful in ways he's never been before. It's natural that he would develop feelings for the person who's been caring for him. You think what he feels isn't real. I think it's complicated, and I think you're smart enough to understand that this situation can't continue indefinitely. Victoria moved to the window, looking out at the city spread below them. We'll recover more of his independence. He'll want to travel again, to be involved in his business, to participate in the social obligations that come with his position. He'll need a partner who can navigate that world with him. The words hurt because they echoed Sarah's own fears. And you don't think I can do that? I think you're a lovely girl who has taken excellent care of my brother during a difficult time. But love isn't always enough, dear. Sometimes the kindest thing is to recognize when two people are simply too different for a relationship to work. Sarah felt anger flare alongside her pain. You don't know anything about me or what I'm capable of. Don't I? You're from a small farming community. You've never traveled, never moved in sophisticated social circles, never dealt with the complexities of significant wealth. How would you handle a dinner party where the conversation revolves around international politics and contemporary art? What would you do at a charity gala where a single misstep could embarrass my brother professionally? Each question hit its mark because Sarah had been asking herself the same things. But hearing them from Victoria, delivered with such cool certainty, made her feel small and inadequate in a way that never had. I could learn, Sarah said quietly. Victoria's smile was not unkind, but it was final. Perhaps, but should you have to? Should have to constantly worry about whether you're comfortable or fitting in? Wouldn't it be better for both of you to find partners who naturally complement your lives? That afternoon, Sarah received a phone call that changed everything. Tommy's voice was excited and happy in a way she hadn't heard since before their father's stroke. Sarah, you're not going to believe this. The new equipment came in, and we got the irrigation system working. We planted the back 40 with soybeans, and they're already showing better than anything Daddy ever grew. And the consultant thinks we could add a small cattle operation next year if we want. That's wonderful, Tommy. It is, and it's all because of what you did, taking that job and getting Mr. interested in helping us. Sarah, I think we're really going to make it. The farm's going to be okay. Sarah listened as her brother described their plans and dreams, and she realized that her original mission was complete. Her family was safe. The farm was not only secure but thriving. The reason she had come to the city no longer existed. That evening immediately sensed that something had changed. You've made a decision, he said as soon as she entered his room. The partnership with my family is working out better than anyone expected, she said, avoiding his eyes. Tommy says they're ahead of schedule on everything, and the profits are already exceeding projections. That's good news. It means they don't need my income anymore. I can go home. Felt his heart stop, but you don't want to go home, do you? Sarah finally met his eyes, and he saw his answer in her tears. Want doesn't matter. What matters is doing the right thing. The right thing is staying here with me. Is it? Your sister made some good points about our different backgrounds. My sister, said with sudden understanding, has been meddling. She cares about you. She's worried that you're making decisions based on gratitude and loneliness rather than real love. And what do you think? Sarah sat down in the chair beside his bed, the same chair where she had spent countless hours talking with him, learning to love him. I think what we have is real, but I also think Victoria might be right about the practical problems. I don't know how to be the partner you need. I don't understand your world, and I'm not sure I can learn fast enough to avoid embarrassing you. Reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Sarah, look at me. She raised her eyes to his, and he saw not just the country girl who had arrived months ago, but the woman she had become during their time together. Stronger, more confident, more sophisticated in ways that had nothing to do with education or social status. Do you remember the first day you were here, when you told me you weren't here to save anybody? She nodded. You were wrong. You did save me. Not from my paralysis, but from something worse. From believing that my life was over, that I had nothing left to offer, that I was broken beyond repair. You saved me by seeing the man I could still be instead of focusing on what I had lost. Let me finish. Victoria thinks you need to become someone different to fit into my world. But the truth is, my world needs to become more like you. It needs authenticity and compassion and the kind of strength that comes from taking care of people you love. It needs someone who values character over connections, who measures success by how well you treat others, not by how much power you accumulate. Sarah felt her resolve wavering as she listened to his words. I don't want you to change to fit my life, continued. I want to change my life to deserve you. I want to build something new, something that combines the best of both our worlds. But what if it doesn't work? What if we try and fail? Smiled, and Sarah saw in his expression the same determination that had built a business empire from nothing. Then we'll have failed trying to build something beautiful instead of succeeding at living separate, smaller lives. Isn't that worth the risk? Before Sarah could answer, they heard voices in the hallway, speaking with someone in urgent, hushed tones. Frowned at the interruption, but Sarah was already moving toward the door. Sarah Johnson. The voice belonged to a young man she didn't recognize. Yes. I'm Doctor's assistant from the hospital back home. I'm sorry to tell you this, but your father has had another stroke. He's in intensive care, and the doctors think you should come home immediately. Sarah felt the world tilt around her. All their talk about the future suddenly seemed meaningless in the face of this crisis. I have to go, she said, turning to with panic in her eyes. Of course you do. We'll arrange a flight. No, I have to go home and stay. Daddy needs me and Tommy can't handle everything alone. The boys need their family together. Understood what she was really saying. This crisis had made the decision for them, providing a reason to end their relationship that had nothing to do with their feelings for each other. This doesn't have to be goodbye, he said desperately. Yes, it does. Sarah's voice was steady despite her tears. This is who I am. When my family needs me, I go. That will always come first, no matter what else I might want. Wanted to argue, to offer solutions, to fix this problem the way he had fixed her family's financial troubles. But he could see in Sarah's eyes that she had already made her choice. I love you, he said simply. I love you too, she replied. That's why I know this is right. You deserve someone who can give you all of themselves, not someone who will always be torn between different worlds. As Sarah packed her few belongings, lay in his bed feeling more paralyzed than he had since his accident. He had finally found something worth fighting for, only to lose it to circumstances beyond his control. But 3 hours later, as Sarah was preparing to leave for the airport, made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He said, calling his assistant into his room, I need you to arrange something for me. Of course, sir. What do you need? I need you to arrange for my medical care to be transferred to the regional hospital in Kentucky, and I need you to contact my physical therapist about continuing my treatment there. Stared at him in shock. Sir, I'm going to Kentucky tonight. Sarah, who had been standing in the doorway with her suitcase, dropped her bag in amazement. What are you doing? He met her eyes with absolute certainty. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. Your father needs medical care and I need you. Maybe we can help each other. But your life is here. My life is wherever you are. Everything else is just geography. Victoria appeared in the doorway behind Sarah, having heard the conversation. You can't be serious. You can't uproot your entire life for a girl you've known for a few months. I'm not uprooting my life, replied calmly. I'm finally planting it somewhere it can grow. He looked at Sarah, seeing hope and love warring with practical concerns in her expression. I know it won't be easy, he said. I'll have to learn about your world the same way you would have had to learn about mine. But the difference is I want to learn. I want to understand what matters to you, what shaped you, what makes you who you are. But the farm, the small town, it's so different from everything you know. Good, I've been living in the same world for 40 years, and it took a paralyzed spine to teach me that something was missing. Maybe what was missing was the chance to be part of something real, something that matters beyond profit margins and stock prices. Sarah looked at this man who was willing to give up everything he knew for love, and she realized that Victoria had been wrong about one crucial thing. Love might not always be enough, but sometimes it was exactly enough. Enough to bridge different worlds, enough to create something new, enough to take the risk of building a life together. Are you sure? She asked. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Sarah walked slowly back into the room, leaving her suitcase in the hallway. Then I guess we're both going home. 6 months later, was sitting on the front porch of a renovated farmhouse, watching his wife of 3 weeks help her father with his physical therapy exercises in the yard. The stroke had left John Johnson with limited mobility, but he was determined to regain his independence, and Sarah was equally determined to help him. Had adapted to rural life in ways that surprised everyone, including himself. He had learned about cattle and crops, had invested in local businesses and created jobs in the community, and had discovered that building something meaningful was more satisfying than building something profitable. Their wedding had been simple, a ceremony in the small church where Sarah had grown up, followed by a reception in the community center where half the county came to celebrate. Victoria had attended, still skeptical but beginning to understand that her brother had found something she had never thought to value, a love based on who he was rather than what he owned. Tommy approached the porch, wiping his hands on a work rag. At 20, he had grown into his role as farm manager, and the operation was more successful than it had ever been. Hey, we've got a problem with the irrigation system in the south field. You want to come take a look? Levered himself into his wheelchair. He had regained some upper body strength but would never walk again. Instead of seeing this as a limitation, he had learned to see it as simply another factor to consider in solving problems. Let's go see what we're dealing with, he said, following Tommy toward the fields where he was learning to find meaning in work that connected him to the earth and the weather and the eternal cycle of growing things. As they headed out to diagnose the mechanical problem, heard Sarah laughing at something her father had said, and he smiled. He had traded a penthouse for a farmhouse, a view of the city for a view of rolling hills, and the constant pressure of business for the seasonal rhythms of agriculture. It was the best deal he had ever made. That evening, as Sarah helped him prepare for bed in their simple bedroom with its handmade quilts and family photographs, reflected on how completely his life had changed. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked, as if reading his thoughts. Giving up your old life. Looked at his wife, this remarkable woman who had saved him in ways he was still discovering, and shook his head. I didn't give up my old life, he said. I traded it for a better one. I traded loneliness for love, success for significance, having everything for having what matters. Sarah kissed him gently, tasting the truth in his words. I love you. I love you too, Sarah. Thank you for showing me what a real life looks like. Outside their window, the Kentucky hills rolled away into darkness, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed softly in the peaceful night. It was a sound that had learned to associate with home, with belonging, with the deep satisfaction that came from building a life based on love rather than ambition. The country girl had indeed captured the billionaire's heart, but in the process, she had given him something far more valuable than the fortune he had been willing to sacrifice for her. She had given him a place in the world where he could be not just successful, but truly happy. And in a small farmhouse in Kentucky, surrounded by family and rooted in love, finally understood what it meant to be rich.